The Neumeister chorales are a relatively recent rediscovery and represent some of Bach's earlier compositions. For BWV 1097, we visit Cornerstone United Methodist Church. Here we find a delightful Holtkamp organ built in the Orgelbewegung tradition.
everybody, and welcome. I'm Jeremiah Martin. This is my home in Southern Ohio. And of course, many of you will know that that is Gordon Young's Prelude in classic style. I'm so sorry we were off to a slightly late start this afternoon, this evening, this morning, wherever you may be. There's a fair bit of technology going on today, so hopefully it will all behave. Hopefully you can hear me okay. It's wonderful to see so many of you in the chat, so thank you for joining. I'm going to try and keep an eye on that as well, because I'm sure there will be some questions as we go along. So we're hearing something new today. This is a new sample set I've been working on. Many of you may know I have a long-standing interest in Hauptwerk. It is the reason I'm still able to play today. From simple setups with some MIDI keyboards, dragging it from one point to another across the United States, indeed across the Atlantic. Always been fascinated about sample set production. I've been learning about it behind the scenes and helping some folks along the way. But I have a couple of sets that I've developed for personal use, and this is my most recent one that I'm going to use to show you guys a little bit about what goes in behind the scenes. Now, if you've recorded or produced some sample sets, there may not be very much new here. However, as those of us who do it know, this is a very deep swimming pool indeed. And my hope is that this will give you an overview, especially if you're new to the world of sampling or perhaps even new to the world of the organ, about what this is all about. So let's meet our organ. This is at Cornerstone United Methodist Church here in Portsmouth, Ohio, and I'm so grateful to Becky Clymer and all of the staff down there who allowed me access to this wonderful instrument. So first of all, the reason I've chosen the program, we're going to hear a lot of Baroque classical theme music. This instrument sits squarely in the organ reform movement, and this was very much at the forefront when I was learning to play the organ. But it goes back to the 1920s. It was a movement that sought return to the tonal clarity, construction, and designs of the Baroque era. So a lot of these instruments have a very clear or very chiffy sound. So what we're going to talk about today is the whole process of how we take those pipes, record them, process them digitally, loop them up, and then ultimately feed them to Hauptwerk, which is the platform that lets us hear all of this. To our non-organist friends here, what makes a pipe organ different to, for example, maybe a piano or a violin? Usually there are many tones playing together, so many pipes playing together at different pitches, which helps to create wonderful different sounds. The pipes are in different families. And when we record and sample these, we have to spend the time to record every single pipe in the pipe organ, which usually ends up being thousands of individual recordings that have to be made. This is the specification of the Holtkamp that we're listening to. So it's a very capable instrument. It has 3 manuals and pedals. The lower manual is the grate on this instrument, then the middle manual is the swell, and then there's a solo upper division. And we're going to hear some of those solo stops here later on. But I wanted to begin with some of the quieter stuff. So I'm going to intersperse music with information about the organ. So with that, let's return to the real world, I guess. And we're going to listen to some of the beautiful flutes. I have a piece for you by Mozart. This is his Adagio for harmonica. This was for glass harmonica, in fact, so you may know it in that context. But we're going to hear all of the different 8-foot flutes. So there are 3 of them, and then I'm going to add in some of the 4-foots as well. But this is a beautiful piece, and I hope you enjoy it. Isn't that such a pretty piece? And I think really works so well on these beautiful flutes, all of which have their own individual characters. So I hope you enjoy that. I'm just taking a look at the chat here and I'm seeing some wonderful conversation going on. So now is probably as good a time as any just to say hi to folks. Let's see. So top of the list we have, in no particular order, I see Aaron, hello. Barbara Clark, good to see you. Bill Rady, thank you for tuning in. And yes, indeed, it is a Holtkamp. Brooks, thank you for tuning in. Cam and Kristen, great to see you. Daniel, good to have you here with us. Dr. Mark Keane, so glad you could tune in. I am here, and I think I'm here a couple of times in this list for some reason. Jill, it's good to see you. And there's Kristen officially. Matt Leach, thank you for being here. Uncle Maurice, thank you for tuning in across the pond. Razbuzz, great to have you. Rick and Debbie, so good to see you. Robert Varner, hello. And I see Stuart Gaskell. Zhenghua, tuning in from Germany. And there's myself once more. So anyhow, wonderful conversation here. And I love to see you all doing the math about how many pipes are in this instrument. So, of course, then we're going to reveal at the end. So you're figuring out how many pipes there might be. Let's think how many individual recordings there might be, because you have pipes, then we have microphone perspectives, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about how we actually record and chop up the samples as well. So I think that tally is going to keep increasing as we go here. Well, let's go back and learn a little bit more. And again, I will try and keep an eye here on questions. Of course, Aaron, yes, sufficiently chiffed. Aren't they just so wonderfully chiffy? Absolutely. That's the term for those pipes that speak that were very characteristic of the Orgelbewegung movement. So, actually, maybe I'm going to reveal this early. Anyhow, we had 3 microphone perspectives. There are 25 gigabytes of audio in this set. And those of us who purchase sample sets, on the one hand, that's a lot, but on the other, it's not. And the Cornerstone Church has a beautiful acoustic, but it's just a little over a second or so, so not as reverberant as some. But we have just over 29,000 individual wave files on disk here. So let's figure out how we actually made that happen. So the process of recording an organ begins with research, just like building an organ. This is digital organ building, and we need to know our instrument and what we're working with. So one place I will usually start is the pipe organ database here in the United States. In England, I know we have the NPOR, and there's probably other databases, but finding a source of truth about how many ranks, how many pipes, what are we getting ourselves into? This was the specification sheet from the pipe organ database. And I like this because it also tells us that this Holtkamp organ, of course, I saw job number 1945 and thought that was the year. No, the year it was commissioned and began construction was 1977, but I believe it was installed in 1978. So yes, 27 stops, but 36 ranks, because notice there are stops like the mixtures that have multiple pipes per note. So these are the tools I brought with me. 3 pairs of microphones, some close microphones to get really up close and personal, 2 pairs of omnidirectional microphones that record that acoustic. I'm a huge fan of the Zoom series of recorders. This one, the F6, is able to behave as an audio interface and was able to bring that audio directly into my MacBook Pro, which I used for the recording. And this is just a little video here, which shows the setup within the church. So there's the instrument. Isn't it beautiful? I love that trumpet enchimade, which we'll probably hear at some point in this program. That's the solo division up top. So here's the console, and it's very characteristic of the Holtkamp consoles, beautiful wooden characteristics, wooden draw stops, or tabs rather. So this was how I set myself up for the evening. My laptop running Cubase, receiving audio from the F6 audio interface. And then I think quickly here we're going to see the close microphones are up on a tall stand, very close to the organ to capture that direct perspective. And then I think I'm going to do my best to zoom out into the space here and show you some of the microphones that are further back. Some folks will move these microphones around between the divisions as we're recording. This instrument is mostly in the same space, so I elected to keep the microphones there, although they were very close to that enchimade, which was wonderful. The F6 recorder also records in 32-bit float, which means I didn't need to worry about necessarily setting audio levels and clipping. It allowed me to do things back in post-production. So I've got my stereo microphone pair, and then at the very, very back, we have the microphones set up on tall stands to the left and right that captured some of the reverb. So there we go, just a little phone recording as we were getting started for the evening. And this is what it sounds like. So there you go, folks. Of course, sampling the mixture. But the sampling process involves working our way sequentially up the keyboard. For example, on the great, there's middle C. So we play a short note to capture that short reverb tail, a medium or marcato note to capture that medium tail. And then we'll hold the note for several seconds to get all of the pipe character, which Hauptwerk then loops through as we're listening to it, and the final acoustic. So 3 recordings per pipe, ultimately ending up with that great big number there. Anyhow, that is a little bit about how we set up and how we record. So that's usually an overnight process. I did it in one night, and again, my gratitude to Becky, who let me in, let me out, kind of stayed there late at night. And we'll usually do this at nighttime because we want to minimize traffic outside, you know, and here in Portsmouth, we have a train that drives by. So not infrequently, as I was going through the process, I'm listening to my headphones. I could hear train noises down at the back of the church I wouldn't necessarily hear at the console. So, okay, we got to pause, we got to wait, and then carry on. When you're recording an instrument, say the Beauty and Sound instruments, Richard in Tewkesbury and Redcliffe with seagulls and big acoustic, those processes frequently take many nights locked in the church overnight, sometimes going back to re-record. So it is a hugely detailed process. Now, I see a question there, a good question from Stuart asking about tuning of the organ. Interestingly, it's not imperative because Hauptwerk and digitally we can fix things. It's preferred because it makes post-production easier, but not as important as we might believe, but definitely helps the process. Anyhow, Okay, so let's move on and we will hear some Stanford and then I'll come back and chat some more about the process. I'm going to play one of his 6 short preludes and postludes. This is number 1 from the first set, and this is going to let us hear some of the warmer sounds of the Holtkamp. It is capable of doing some beautiful romantic sounds as well. So here it is. There we go, folks. The first of Stanford, set 1. There are 2 beautiful sets of preludes and postludes, and definitely worth adding to the repertoire if you're an organist. I hope you enjoyed that. But yes, lots of wonderful chippy tones. I'm just looking back here at the chats. And Bill, yes, recording organs can take such a long time. I was really the Cornerstone instrument luxury that it was in perfect condition. Really, really plays wonderfully. The acoustic was very forgiving, but certainly when you're in a space with a lot of outside noise, it ends up taking a long, long time. So anyhow, folks, let's jump back in because I wanted to tell you a little bit about what happens next. So recording the instrument is just the beginning, and that can be several overnights in the space. Then you bring all of your data back home, you have to offload it to your computers, and then we have to make something of it. So let us have a look at some of that. So here we go. Denoising. So this is perhaps one of the most challenging things to do. So I've got a little demo video that's going to play here that will show a before denoising, after denoising, and why it's important. But in short, you can probably hear in the background here, there's a little bit of hiss from the organ blower. If I turn it off, now I'm not sure if that came across in your speakers, just turning it off versus on, but pipe organs are wind instruments, and there is ambient sound that's there. There's just a noise floor. And when we record each pipe, that noise print is in each one of those. When I play a big chord on a real pipe organ, I hear all of those pipes, but the noise floor, there's just one blower. However, if I've recorded every single note and Hauptwerk plays them all back together, now I've got 10, 20, 50 copies of the blower, and especially in the reverb part of the recording. And that all adds up and it just becomes completely unusable. So we actually have to remove all of that noise, but do it in such a way that we don't harm the character of the pipe. So this little video shows the tool that I use. It's one of the industry standards. It's called Isotope RX. It's going to show a flute that includes noise, then the noise gone. And then it's actually going to continue over to, I just recorded a brief area to show you what it sounds like with a quiet pipe, and you can kind of hear a car rumbling in the distance, and you'll see it on the spectrogram. So here we go. I am so sorry. I realized I had my mic turned off there. Thank you for saying that there in the chat. Anyhow, let me quickly rewind and just to say that that is the denoising process. It's much like spring cleaning at the house where you have to move out all the furniture and vacuum behind things. The denoising software I use is Isotope RX. And it has a lot of, it's industry standard. It has, you know, some intelligent features to help, but there's a lot of manual work that has to be done to really get things clean, but not damage the characteristics of the pipes. Anyhow, looking back here at the chat, so I guess I ultimately denoised myself. I turned off my microphone so that you could really hear all that blower noise. So anyhow, here we go. We're back. So I wanted to continue with what happens next. We've denoised, we've got these long recordings that are still just the recordings we made. Now we have to cut them all up into little individual pieces, name them as .wav files, and there's further downstream processing that comes. But let me just briefly go back and show you the Hauptwerk file system. So getting organized, haha. So Hauptwerk, behind the scenes, those of us who run Hauptwerk at home, you've probably seen organ installation packages, and each numbered folder in there is a specific pipe organ and all of its samples. Some pipe organs have multiple installation packages. Now, Hauptwerk actually it's possible for anybody with a regular license to use the custom organ definition module and create their own sample set. You know, some pots and pans in the kitchen, whatever you may. We are requested though to use a very high numbers. I think it's in the 90,000 range, and that's specified. But these lower numbers like 002878, it's free to apply for this when you apply to Central Command, Milan Digital Audio, and they will assign you a series of organ installation packages. The idea being, if I share the Holtkamp at some day, that it doesn't overwrite, you know, a Sonus Paradisi organ sample set. So that numbering system is maintained at Mission Control. But for development process, these, you know, you can use pretty much any number, quite frankly. So the components are an organ installation package, and then there's a definition file, the organ definition file, which is the big database that tells Hauptwerk what to do with all of these files. And what you can see there on the right, and we can look at this a little bit closer here, I've got all of my ranks laid out. There's a little XML file that tells Hauptwerk what's in this folder. And then within that, so say for example, within the Great Principle 8, I've got a close front and rear folder. Within the close front and rear, then I've got long, medium, and short releases. Some ranks have a tremulant. And then you can see the naming convention there. It's based on the MIDI note number. On our MIDI keyboards, 36 is the lowest number, 60 is middle C, and then all the way up. So ultimately, you have to develop some batch scripts to help out with this Holocene. But we're going to come back to looping after our next piece of music. But there you go, a little bit about denoising, chopping up, putting things. And again, for anybody who may be just joining, I see, hey there, good chappy. Folks that may know about sampling, a lot of this may seem rudimentary, but I know that even 15 years into my Hauptwerk journey, the back end of Hauptwerk seemed like just a dark art. I couldn't comprehend it. So my goal here is to share a basic overview that would be enough to, quite frankly, get you started on a basic set. And then it's honestly a learning process from that point on. Okay, enough talking. Time for some more music. I acknowledge I haven't played a live stream at home for a little while. I've been traveling, and a special request I got at a church I visited in East Haven. I know my friends at Christ in the Epiphany will be tuning in later, but one of their favorite pieces of music is Bach's 565. And I realized I've never actually played it live on the channel. There is a recording out there somewhere. But if there is an organ for this, it's probably this one. So let me go ahead and play for you Bach's famous Toccata and Fugue in D minor on the Holtkamp. Well, folks, there you have it. The famous, or is it infamous, 565. I hope you enjoyed that. And just checking back in here. Bill, as you mentioned, yes, that is definitely how the composite sets are being made. Yeah, so if there are sets that are unencrypted, licenses allow, you can definitely mix and match samples from other organs, and then you kind of have to voice and tune them to make them cohesive. But anyhow, I am glad you folks enjoyed that. Thank you all so much. And Bill, oh yes, so recording the mixture. No, so I recorded the mixture as it was. You are absolutely correct. I would be interested to know how many folks actually sample the individual notes in a mixture. So for folks that may not be familiar, a mixture is, for example, like this. So if we play this 2-foot on the grate, so it's one note. If I put on the 4-rank mixture, so there are 4 pipes speaking, and there is a split point as they move up. So the way I sample this is probably how a lot of folks would, which just record it as is. Now that does mean there's not a whole lot I can do to tune the mixture afterwards. I found that there's often a dominant harmonic, like one of the notes, one of the small notes in there is more dominant than others. And I tried where necessary then to shift the mixture to kind of lock onto that, but it does mean it's not perfectly in tune, but I don't know. I think that adds some character. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is we have recorded, we have denoised, we've cut it up and put it in files and folders. The next issue is looping. So you'll notice, particularly on the mixture, I would have held, for example, middle C for, it was a mixture, it was 2 in the morning, so it got 3 seconds in that acoustic. I know. But then, how do we do this? And then a transition. So that's part of the magic of Hauptwerk, is that it will loop, but it doesn't know where. We have to go through and programmatically set that up. So that is the next part of, getting a sample set to sound well, is taking the audio that you've recorded, using as much of it as possible, and telling Hauptwerk, these are points that will transition, so you can loop those around and around. So let's look at that. I've actually got another brief video here. I'm not going to mute my mic so I don't leave myself off, but this is going to show perhaps the most commonly used looping software. It's called Loop Auditioneer. It's in the open source community. It's used not just by Hauptwerk, but other organ sampling programs as well. And it allows identification of loop points and then auditioneer. We can listen to them. I have purposely created a bad loop, which you will hear, and you'll hear it manifest as a click, and then we'll transition to a good loop. There's still a small click in this recording, but we'll just give you the idea. So here is Loop Auditioneer, again, working through this, and this is not just per note. We have to do it for each perspective, close, front, and rear, so it has to be done individually across the board. So there we go, folks. And as you can see here in the software, there's L1, L2, L3, and the rectangles are overlapping. Hauptwerk likes to have overlapping loops because then that allows it to transition randomly between them to try and introduce additional liveliness into the playing as we're working on things. So that's coming later. So let's come back and hear a little bit more music. So I wanted to talk about the solo division. This is the third manual on this instrument. It has 5 stops up here, actually. The first is the copula major, which is the major flute. There's a 4-foot version of that, the minor, together. And there's a cornet stop. The cornet is a multi-rank stop, but it's a wonderful solo stop. And I did sample the tremulant with these. The Cornerstone tremulant is very effective. So just wonderful expressive possibilities. Of course, the big trumpet lives up here. So wonderful big trumpet that speaks into the space. And I didn't really have use for it in the program, but we have a single percussion stop. Right, Cam? Those are the chimes. Anyhow, as has kind of been mentioned in the conversation here, an organ reform instrument like this clearly lends itself to Baroque, classical, but also modern music, which we're going to come back to. But first of all, let's go back to the before times and to show off some of the solo sounds here. A piece by Couperin from his the Messe pour les couvents. I apologize for my French. This is the Élévation, Tierce on taille. folks. Isn't that beautiful? And just some wonderful, beautiful sounds there on this Holtkamp. So I see a couple of other names have joined us. Let's see, make sure I don't miss anybody since I last ran the list. I see David Pierce, Georges, hello. Joe Humans is here. Marcus Reeves, thank you for tuning in. Good chappy. And Michelle, good to see you. And Herr Garchor is here. Hey, Fraser. John Ruiz and Christian. Thank you all for being here. So I saw a question there from Barbara Clark. Why this specific instrument? Well, as I've lived here in Portsmouth, believe it or not, 10 years this summer, I've been working my way around. In fact, the first real pipe organ I sampled was the big Kilgan in town. I've learned a lot since then, and with each iteration, I think getting a little bit better. So hopefully, actually, Patrick Torsell, who's, I'm so fortunate to have him here in town as our music director, suggested I should release the Portsmouth Pack at some point. So here in town, I've sampled the Kilgan, the Holy Redeemer instrument, which you've heard before, and we may hear briefly as we finish up, and now this Holtkamp. There is one other very special instrument in town, a historic instrument, and more on that in due course. Anyhow, so last dive into some of the technicalities. I've talked about all the audio side. I haven't talked about, making the graphics work, but has got a lot of overlap with website design and just cutting up images. A lot of overlap also with cutting up the audio, putting it into folders. But at the end of the day, we have to tell Hauptwerk what to do with all of this. There are two file formats that Hauptwerk understands. Maybe three if you count the version 1 file format, which it's still able to import. But at the end of the day, the main organ definition file is a large relational database that tells Hauptwerk what to do with all of the samples, when to play them, how to tune them, how to control the screens, how the stops work. But the user-friendly, in as much as it is, format is the CODM. And if you have Hauptwerk, you can go to the menu and you can open the user guide and you can actually look at some of the sample organs that were provided. But, the first time I found myself looking at it, I was somewhat overwhelmed. And then it kind of is, you sort of have to dive in and start playing with it. But as I mentioned, once you know that there's a place where all of the audio files go, this instruction tells it how to work. There are a couple of tools. It's an XML file, which you can see at the top right of this image as XML markup language. So it looks like an extended version of the markup language used for websites. So basically it defines tables. Now this program is the one I started with and highly recommended for XML editing because it turns the raw text into tables that look a little bit more like Excel spreadsheets and you can edit them. It's called XML Marker. And at the end here, I'll assemble some links and put them in the description. So XML Marker is a wonderful tool. But basically what we're looking at here is part of the rank table. Within Hauptwerk or within a pipe organ, a rank is the pipes that sit on the wind chest, the 61 pipes. So the most important tables then in Hauptwerk is there's a rank table, which tells Hauptwerk this is an 8-foot principle and this is where you find the samples for it. This is the various points at which I want you to transition between short, medium, and long releases. So that has to be defined. So that's the rank. The stop is the tab or the knob that we draw at the console, and that's the physical control. So there's a stop table, which is the list of all the stops. And then there's a third table that puts it all together called stop rank, very imaginative. And the stop rank table tells Hauptwerk that, for example, when the great 8-foot principle is drawn, that the keys of the great should be connected one-to-one to the great rank. That's where we do things like extensions. For example, on this organ, there is a stop called the pommer, which is shared between the grate and the pedal. So as part of my planning, I had to realize this is a longer rank. It really lives on the grate. So this is, what it sounds like. So it's a lower stop and it can be used, but it's also available on the pedal. If I play, I know you can't see with this camera, but that's middle C on the pedal, but changing nothing, just the stop, that's a 4-foot palmer on the pedal. So this stop, there are 3 physical tabs on the console that are linked to that single rank of pipes. And the stop rank table within Hauptwerk is what defines that. So again, just giving you a rough overview of how we are, basically digitally building an organ. Now, fortunately, I've moved on, and most people eventually move on from trying to edit the raw XML. This is a database program called SQLite Studio. There are many of them, but this is my favorite. Plus, it's free. The price is right. And Hauptwerk is able to export and import .SQL tables. So this way, now we're able to edit in a much more friendly grid-like environment, import it back into Hauptwerk. Hauptwerk then translates it back into the ODF that it needs. Now, fortunately, where can I learn more? There are some really good resources. This is a really long and detailed playlist, but well worth a look. Mark put so much time into this. And this is the CODM guide, and he basically just goes through step-by-step editing a CODM, how you define and set up a pipe organ from scratch. So that is kind of the final piece. Obviously, we don't have time to go into that in this quick overview here, but that's what brings all of the magic together. And in the CODM, yes, you can do your own interfaces. The basic St. Anne's organ can be programmed from scratch within the CODM. So that's a useful tool. Now, let's move to shameless self-promotion. Again, the last gentleman on the line here, Patrick Torsell, I'm so thankful for him being in town and starting this whole concert series. Just this past weekend, we had Dr. Douglas Leitenheimer playing at Holy Redeemer, but I am working towards a concert next month at St. Mary's. And that church, as you'll hear more about in due course, we have a Hauptwerk setup at the moment, and I'm working on some French-themed music. And there's one piece I've been dusting off that works really well on this organ. So I figured it's not no perfect yet. There's going to be some moments, but how about we listen to Alain's Litanies? Alain lived at the early part of the 20th century, unfortunately died very young, and his piece Litanies has been felt to be just kind of this evocative piece. A litany, especially in the Catholic liturgy, is a repeating meditative style prayer. So there are repeating themes that build and build and build towards a great big finale. It's modern. Alain was all about interesting registrations and sounds, and it's exactly the kind of music that works on a Holtkamp like this. So I hope you enjoy. There you have it, folks. Alain's Litanies, a wonderful piece of music. And for my organist friends, I notice a number of you have played this. And yeah, that left-hand piece at the end, that's going to need a little bit more piano work, or just full organ and just, you know, it is what it is. So next month, of course, you'll be have an opportunity to hear this twice. I will be playing it at home. So my plan is I will be playing the recital at St. Mary's on the Sunday, but I will live stream it from home here essentially the day before as kind of a work through. So next month's live stream will include Litanies on Con. So big cavacal French acoustic. I'm going to change organs here. Let me know. Did you enjoy the Holtkamp? What do you think of it? I'm not going to lie. I'm rather pleased with how it's turned out. But I'm going to switch over to my penultimate organ, which was the Felgemaker at Holy Redeemer. Because we're kind of getting close to the end of the program here. Thank you again. I know we were off to a later start, but thank you for sticking with me. And I hope you enjoyed this tour of a new sample set and what goes into making it. We are now literally across the street from Cornerstone United Methodist Church. And again, my gratitude to the kind and good folks at Cornerstone who let me record this instrument. After a little bit more tweaking and tuning up, I'm hoping to have some of them over to hear it in the room here. But this is literally across the street. It is the Felgemaker instrument of Holy Redeemer, where Dr. Doug Leitenheimer, of course, played last week. And I definitely encourage you checking out that stream. I have a little video clip I'm going to share as the outro so you'll get to hear. But as far as an A-B comparison, I'm going to play one of Bach's short preludes and fugues on this, and then we will finish up for today. So I hope you enjoy. Again, note we're in a much different acoustic now. Well, folks, there we have it. A little more sunshine on the way out. And yes, actually, that was probably the first organ piece that I learned as well. And I think the same is true for many of us. I see Mark actually agrees that. So anyhow, thank you guys so much for spending this time with me. As always, I couldn't do this without you. It's a wonderful motivation, and thank you all for showing up and for your support. So, of course, I will see you in all of the usual places. We're fortunate to have so many talented organists sharing their music with us online. So do go ahead and share the love. Thank you all so much. As promised, I'm going to close out with a clip from last weekend's concert. Doug Leidenheimer really brought the Felgemaker to life and found all kinds of sounds. So here's a little bit of, would you believe it, sweet Gothique. And I will see you on the next one.